Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, we're going to create a Christmas door hanger using one of the new IOD molds. To begin my project, I'm going to put down one coat of Dixie Belle's Fluff Chalk Mineral Paint, and I'm adding it to a 45 centimeter diameter wood round. You can find a full product list in the description below, and most of these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Next, I'm going to be using IOD's new Oh Christmas Tree mold. I'm so excited to have these guys in Australia. We've been waiting a bit longer than everyone else, so I am so happy to finally have these to play with. So as you can see, this is a lovely big design. I'm going to dust it really well with cornstarch. It's very highly detailed, so this is definitely a good idea if you're going to be using clay. Of course, you can use resin if you want. I'm using Plus air dry clay in my mold today, and you can see I sort of flattened it out into a similar size shape, and then I'm pressing it into the mold. I'm really working it down with my thumbs, then pressing the clay out against the micro rim to get a nice line. This is quite a big mold and very detailed, as I said, so it definitely took a little bit of extra work, but it was definitely worth it. This is such a gorgeous design. I also used my brayer to sort of spread and smooth the clay out at the back, and then you can see I'm just continually working that clay out up against that micro rim, and then when I'm ready, I'm going to flex the mold, and then very carefully I'm going to spin it over and let gravity help me work it out. Definitely take your time when you're doing this. I did have a few little bits break off. I wasn't too worried about this. I could always just glue them back in place, but I'm going to be doing a few of these trees, and they're going to be sitting near each other, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm then going to transfer my casting to my wood round. It's definitely a good idea to have your castings on some sort of a plastic mat to make moving them around a little bit easier. And this time I actually trialed using a rolling pin to roll out my clay before I actually put it into the mold. This definitely helped me be able to smooth it out a little bit quicker. And I'm just going to repeat the same steps until I have two trees to sit either side of the first one. My vision for this piece is to have one taller tree in the center with two slightly shorter trees sitting either side and a little bit behind. So I'm going to do some layering. I'm using a strong quick set wood glue to glue my castings down. And once I have those in position, I'm going to actually trim a little bit off the bottom because we're going to add some details down the bottom as well. Next, I'm going to be using IOD's Holly Lane mold. This was from last year's holiday release. I'm dusting it well with cornstarch, and then I'm rolling my clay into a sausage sort of a shape, and then I'm pressing the clay into the mold with my thumbs. I did sort of piece this one together, and just take your time when you're doing this, and as long as you've got that cornstarch in your mold, it's going to make it a lot easier to work with. When I have enough clay in my mold, I'm going to turn it over, and then I'm going to let gravity help me get it out. I like to bend the mold backwards. It just helps the clay to release. I'm then going to position this casting underneath my trees. I ended up flipping it around actually. I felt like it looked a little bit better the other way around. And remember, because I'm using clay, I can manipulate these into a variety of shapes. I'm then going to glue it down with my quick set wood glue and start molding it to the shape of the trees. Anywhere that I have clay overhanging the edge, I'm going to take a little plastic spatula and just very carefully cut off the excess. I'm then going to cast a few more pieces from the Holly Lane mold. There's this shorter piece of holly that I'm going to make. I'm going to have that on the left side and the right hand side. I'll also be casting another smaller piece as well. I also have a few castings from the Boughs of Holly mold. This was from a few years ago. I'm going to be placing a few of these on our design. For the top section of our wood round, I'm going to be adding some of these elements from the Oh Christmas Tree mold. They have this lovely sort of draped garland sort of a look to them. I thought they'd be perfect up the top, so I'm going to try and create a swag sort of a look. So I'm just working that clay in and then flexing my mold and then very carefully pulling the casting out. I'm going to need about 3 of these different pieces for each side. To create the look I'm going for, I'm actually going to tear part of the casting away, and I'm going to be layering these, so it's okay if it's not quite perfect. You can see I'm sort of draping them over the top of each other, and if I have some extra little elements, I can just add them in. These castings work so beautifully together when they're layered, so you can see I've got a sort of rough outline here of how I'm going to be applying it. So I'm just draping it, layering it, working out how I want it to go. I'm then going to grab the Blitz mold. This is also from last year's holiday release, and I'm going to be casting a few of each of these smaller snowflakes. So I'm just going to work that clay into each of those little designs and then pull the design out very gently. If you don't have access to this particular mold, you could always use a stencil or a stamp for your snowflakes instead. I want to add the words Merry Christmas in the center, so I'm going to be using IOD's Harper Decor mold. I've dusted them well with cornstarch, and now I'm going to work my plus air dry clay into them. These are very fiddly, so I completely understand if you want to do them with resin. I'm trying not to use too much resin, so we are definitely doing them in clay today. So I just take my time, and you can see I really flex and bend that mold, and I go really slow as I'm taking the clay out. It's also been suggested that you put your molds in the freezer with the clay in them. You let them sit there for about 10 minutes and it makes it a lot easier to take them out. I, however, am far too impatient for this, so I just struggled along and did my best, and I had to remake the letter S a few times, but that's okay, we're not going for perfect here. Here you can see I am starting to glue down the other pieces of holly and the little pine cones from the Boughs of Holly mold. I'm layering those on there, and remember my clay is wet so I can mold it to whatever shape I want. I'm then going to start adding the elements up the top. So I'm going to layer these. I'm laying down each section and then positioning the other layer on top. So again, this will just depend what design you're going for as to which order or how you arrange these. I'm then going to glue the pine cones up the top in the center. Next, I'm going to very carefully glue down my letters. Definitely be gentle here. Those are pretty fragile, so just take your time as you're gluing them down. Once I had all my castings glued down, I then came in with some of Dixie Belle's Fluff Chalk Mineral Paint. I like to paint my castings before they're completely dry, and I also used my mister on my paint to help it go a bit further. Now, this usually helps to minimize any cracking or shrinking with your clay. Unfortunately, you will see very soon I did have some cracking. After letting my clay completely dry, you can see I had quite a few cracks. Now, the reason for this, I believe, is because of how thin my clay was, because a lot of my other castings did not crack. So I really think it's because of how thin they were and because I did some layering, so perhaps I have to try different clay. I'm not too worried about the cracks though, because we are going to be adding a raised element over them. Next, I'm going to be using Dixie Belle's French Linen Chalk Mineral Paint. I'm going to add some onto a little makeup sponge, and then I'm going to dab that paint just in the background. For this piece, my vision is a snowy, wintry sky. So I'm just trying to think of the different tones and colors that you would see in a sky like that. So we're going to be doing some layering to achieve that look. So starting with the French linen, dabbing it all over the background and also the lettering. While my French linen layer is still a little bit wet, I'm going to use some of Dixie Belle's Savannah Mist Chalk Mineral Paint. You can see I also have my mister to reactivate the paint a little bit. So we're just layering here to create the look that we want. And then I'm going to come in with some more of Dixie Belle's Fluff Chalk Mineral Paint over the top. I personally really like playing around with colors and trying to paint and create the background that I want. But if this seems like a little bit too much of a challenge or too much of a hassle to you, you could definitely try and find a decoupage paper design that fits the look you're going for instead. Next, I'm going to be using Dixie Belle's Juniper Chalk Mineral Paint. This was a limited edition fall color. I'm going to add that to the trees and also to the holly down below. To add some tonal contrast and a little bit more realism, I'm now coming in with Dixie Belle's Palmetto Chalk Mineral Paint. I'm doing this over the top of the juniper before it's already dry. I find that this helps to blend those colors and make it look a little bit more realistic. I'm also adding those same colors onto the swag design that we made up the top, but I'm only going to have the juniper on the holly that we added down the bottom. I'm using Dixie Belle's Chocolate Chalk Mineral Paint on the pine cones that we've added as well. Before the chocolate paint has completely dried, I'm going to use a baby wipe to wipe back some of the paint from the high points. Again, this is going to create a little bit of tonal contrast, but it's also going to draw attention to the beautiful details in those molds. I'm also going to be using a wet wipe to wipe back some of the juniper paint from the holly leaves. This is going to highlight some of those beautiful details in the Holly Lane mold. When my paint was completely dry, I took Paint Couture's embossing medium and a palette knife, and I'm going to start adding it to the trees to create the look of fallen snow. You can see I'm adding it and then I'm dragging the product down to make it look like snow that's fallen on the branches. Adding the embossing medium is going to create a lovely raised element, some 3D interest, but it's also going to hide those cracks. If you don't have access to this embossing medium, you could use some sort of a texture additive to your paint. I've heard of a product called Puffy Paint. One of my viewers suggested that, or you could also use some sort of spackle or filling medium as an alternative. I'm also going to add the embossing medium up the top on the swag greenery that we created. Next, I'm going to add some of Dixie Belle's Barn Red chalk mineral paint to the little holly berries down the bottom. I wanted to lighten the background sky a little bit more, so I've got a little bit of Dixie Belle's Fluff Chalk Mineral Paint on my brush. I'm dabbing off a lot of the excess in the lid, and you can see I'm almost dry brushing over the background. I'm also going to do a little bit of dry brushing on the holly details down the bottom on the little pine cones, and I'm also going to do a little bit of dry brushing on the tree, just a little bit of subtle white. Once my paint had completely dried, I used Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat to seal the entire piece. Next, I'm going to use some of Paint Couture's Luxe Bronze Metallic. I'm using that over the top of the letters for Merry Christmas, and I'm also going to use it on the snowflakes. Now, I've done this after sealing so that if I make any mistakes, I can wipe that up with a wet wipe. If you're looking for Christmas craft inspiration, make sure you check out my other videos and my other Christmas playlists. I have lots of inspiration for festive projects. On the Oh Christmas Tree castings, there are what appears to be little bauble decorations in the tree. Well, that's what I'm going to interpret them to be. And I'm going to come in and add some of that Luxe Bronze Metallic to some of those sections. I'm just going in very light. I'm not doing too many. I just want a hint of that beautiful bronze. I'm also adding some to the top swag design. I'm then going to use what's remaining on my brush to go over the top of the pine cones. There's just a little bit of that bronze paint left. I just love this hint of bronze on those details. I'll also add a touch of that bronze to the holly leaves down below. To give this a little bit of an antiqued look, I'm going to use some of Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Glaze. I have it on a sponge, and I'm just going to go around the edge of the wood round where we have that gap between the top and the bottom designs, and I'm just adding a little bit of that brown to add a touch of age. This is going to be very subtle, and I can use a wet wipe to wipe back any areas that are a bit too intense. When that's dry, I'm going to add some of Paint Couture's bronze, but this time with a sponge. I'm adding that around the edge of the wood round and also dabbing it on so that it's visible from the front as well. Finally, I'm going to attach this lovely ribbon that I got from Costco. It's just a simple Hessian style ribbon. I'm going to attach that to the back. I wanted to keep it pretty simple because we have quite an elaborate design on the door hanger itself. So I've trimmed off the length that I think I'm going to need. I'm then going to flip it over and then fold over some of that ribbon and staple it into place. I'm going to use quite a few staples to make sure that it stays there. And here's our Christmas door hanger. I love how this turned out. It was so fun to finally be able to play with that gorgeous Christmas tree mold. Let me know what you think of today's project in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.